And we are live here on YouTube. This is Balls and Sticks, the podcast. My name is Rich. My buddy Mike is off this week as it's his wife's birthday, and they are also out of town for a wedding for a friend of the show, Solomon Stroop, down in Kentucky. Pre-show introduction shout outs to both Danielle and Solomon. Enjoy the weekend and congratulations. And a happy birthday to Danielle. Um, this week, nothing really special about this weekend for me. The garage sale that I had referenced like last week got rescheduled to next week due to work. Uh, so yeah, but just a fairly normal week here with work. With work, nothing really big to share. So today, as I said, Mike is out of town, won't be joining me on the stream today. So this will be an unplugged episode, no intro or outro, and will just be me talking to the camera to hopefully get through the hour-ish episode to keep our recording streak alive. So this week, big week for the Chicago Cubs and Major League Baseball as a whole, as it was the trade deadline on Monday. So on today's show, we'll be going over what I thought of the Cubs deadline deals, and we'll also keep that on the outline for next week, so Mike can give his opinion as well. And then I'll probably give in my opinion maybe what teams got maybe one team that I thought did the best at the deadline other than the Cubs, which team maybe got an incomplete, and which ones missed the mark, as well as we'll be going into the NASCAR corner to preview the race out in Newton, Iowa today for the Iowa Corn 350, as well as some schedule news. So, so this is normally the point in the show where we would be rolling the intro, but as I said before, this is an unplugged episode, so we're going to get right into the show. So this week, we always start our show with a poll question. This week's poll question on PE activities in grade school. We had number 20 ranked horse versus number 5 kickball. Um, I went with I went with kickball as I don't really see horse as a PE activity. It's more of I think of that more as a playground activity that's a playground activity that happens, or like a free play activity when the gym teacher didn't have anything planned. And also I just like kickball better. So we're going to be doing a family weekend, a family night for our church missional community this Tuesday, and at a local park. So I'm hoping to get to play some kickball. Um, Hoping to get to play some kickball this week, later on this week. So let me go over to the poll results to look up how the voting went this week. So I believe when I checked it, horse was the activity that won, but we're going to make sure here. Waiting for the old webpage, and it was horse that won. Joining me with kickball was my buddy Mikey Hart, but horse will move on as the people have spoken, as putting horse in an upset win based off of our rankings. We have my wife, Amy Hendricks, the birthday girl, Danielle Hart, as well as friend of the show, Matt Borchers. So those are your results. Horse will move on to the next round. This week's poll question, which I'll get up and scheduled before the But once I get done recording, will be number 18 ranked Foursquare versus number 7 ranked Dodgeball. This is regular dodgeball. This is no special variations, just regular old dodgeball. You can find that poll question up on our Facebook page at Fans of Balls and Sticks, the podcast. If you find it there on Facebook, make sure to like, comment, and share the post. It helps get the votes out there so we can have a higher vote total and also just show engagement. So thank you for everyone that voted. This week, we have no comments on that post, so we have none to share. All right. So, do you see what's coming up next? It's a left turn. And after that is another left turn because we're going to go into the NASCAR corner. The NASCAR corner is presented by Triple I Sports Cards Incorporated, Moline, Illinois, and you can also find them on eBay. Triple I Sports Cards Incorporated for all your sports cards, memorabilia, and I believe they also have Pokemon cards. Check them out down on downtown Moline on Fifth Avenue or find them online in on eBay. Last week we did not have a race as NASCAR gave the drivers a bye week, but this week we'll be out in Newton, Iowa, which is just a short, maybe 2 hour drive away from where I'm at in Iowa. And maybe a race I'm hoping to get to one day. One day. Um, so So our picks this week, Mike just texted me his pick for the race being the control car from having his pick from with his pick of Todd Gilliland finishing higher than Bubba Wallace 2 weeks ago at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He texted me and he picked Austin Cindric. And so you know that I'm not lying and making up the driver. There is the text. Austin Cindric is his pick. A Team Penske driver, not a bad choice. This Team Penske normally does well at this track. And it's going to be Team Penske that I'm also going to pick from, as I'm going to go with Joey Lugano. He has back-to-back top tens at Iowa. He seems to be getting into a groove here late in the season as a winner at North Wilkesboro, being an intermediate track, and he's normally a good intermediate track driver as well. You can catch that race over on the USA Network at 2:30, or if you're lucky enough, get on out to Newton, Iowa, as a lot of our listeners are local to the Iowa area. So maybe you can get tickets to that race. All right. Elsewhere in the NASCAR world, the schedule is starting to slowly leak out for the 2027 season. And key dates that have been really announced is a reach of the Bush Clash returning to Daytona Speedway, reestablishing Speed Weeks at Daytona to get you ready for the upcoming season. So you'll have the Bush Light, you'll have the Clash. Yeah, you'll have the Clash at Daytona, and then leading right into a couple days later having the duels at Daytona to establish the running order for the Daytona 500. Previous hosts of this exhibition race recently being Bowman Gray Stadium down in North Carolina and the LA Coliseum. The LA Coliseum to me never really made sense, as you're trying to put a really short track into the football stadium there in downtown Los Angeles. The only thing that made sense for it is that it's historic and they were maybe trying to get a foothold into the LA market, but it just didn't seem to work It just didn't seem to work as well as having drivers have to go cross country for a one-off one-off race. And Bowman Gray this year had problems with rain as well as snow in North Carolina of all places. So I'm glad to see it go back down to Daytona so that you don't have as much issues with weather and drivers aren't having to go cross country for a one-off race just to go right back to Florida in North Carolina, Florida and the East Coast to prepare for the Daytona 500. Elsewhere in schedule announcements, the Iowa Speedway, where this week's race is being held, it's been announced that it will get the July 4th weekend date next year, which means that it will be going to from the NBC slate, NBC USA Network slate of races over to TNT, and will be a part of the in-season bracket challenge, which is awesome. So far, I've liked the racing that I've seen at the Iowa Speedway, so it'll be neat to see how that will work into the clash. And they've also announced that New Hampshire and Watkins Glen will be in the chase next year. New Hampshire seems to be a site that kind of gets floated around, gets its race date rotated a lot, but it also I kind of like it because I think you get New Hampshire, you're involving all regions of the country in the NASCAR playoffs or the chase. And Watkins Glen, I think that's a great addition to the chase because you get a road course in the chase, which I think is important to have all types of racing in the chase. So good schedule additions that we've announced so far. So more scheduled announcements probably will be made in the next couple of weeks, and I'm sure Mike and I will be talking with them as they're announced. So key things to look at it with the upcoming schedule to be on the lookout for is where's the All Star race going to be? A lot of fans want it returned to Charlotte, where it was traditionally held before they moved it to Bristol due to COVID, and then they've also put it in North Wilkesboro and Dover this past year. So I think that the in videos that I've watched looking where they have discussed their schedule predictions, they've said that it's more than likely going to go back to Dover. Which brings me to my next point with the schedule. What to look for in the schedule announcement is where will the Dover race be scheduled? Will it be on the front half of the schedule with on the Fox network? Will it be somewhere in the middle, or will it be the All Star race? Dover's a great track. It has a rich history in the racing world, and you know they're going to get a race. It's just when they're going to get the race, as well as will there be a street race? Street racing, we're on like it'll be the fourth year that they could have a street race with two in Chicago and this past one in San Diego. Uh, personally, I I'd wish that they would just take off the street race from the schedule and go to a track, either give a second date back to a track that historically has two race events or possibly go back down to Mexico City for a race. I thought we got some good racing down there with Daniel Suarez and Shane Van Gisbergen putting on great performances uh, last year when the race went down to Mexico City. As I don't know if San Diego is feasible since they put it on to a naval base. And if the city of Chicago can't get their act together to put together a stadium proposal for the Chicago Bears, as well as having a perfectly good race course just down the road in Joliet, which put on a good show this past year. Why do we need to pigeonhole a race into the city of Chicago. I'm not an Illinois resident, but I think nor a Chicagoland resident, but I think those tax dollars and funds could be spent elsewhere to fix the city rather than putting on a NASCAR race for a weekend, even though that brings in some good tourism dollars with how they host the event between the race weekend, between having at least two of the series race the course and having concerts all weekend in Grant Park. I just don't think it's worth it, and I'd rather see racing elsewhere on an established track, or maybe NASCAR using the opportunity to put a street course in a new city. So stay tuned to that. All right, we're going to keep making left-hand turns, but before we do, we'll give our unofficial sponsor another shout out. So that was the NASCAR Corner presented by Triple I Sports Cards Incorporated, Moline, Illinois, and you can also find them on eBay. Triple I Sports Cards Incorporated. So we're going to keep making left-hand turns. We're going to go to the dirt of the baseball diamond. This week, the Cubs had two with the New York Yankees, three with the LA Dodgers, one with the Blue Jays before going down to Kansas City for a weekend set. They split their series with the New York Yankees. They surprisingly swept the LA Dodgers. Had a nice come from behind win on Thursday with the Blue Jays, and they won a pretty decisive game in Kansas City last night, giving them 5 wins, which was way more than both Mike and I predicted. As I said 4 wins, Mike only said 3 wins. So the Cubs are getting hot at the right time. And with that Dodgers series, I guess we caught the Dodgers at the right time as they, as I think when they started that series, they were on like a 5 game losing streak. So even though they had Tarek Skubal on the mound for the Tuesday game, we still beat them. That's great. It didn't make up much ground in the standings as the Brewers are still red hot and leading the division. So speaking of the Central Division, the Cubs are currently 4.5 games back in the division with a record of 68 and 49. The Brewers lead the division with a record of 72 and 41 and hold the number one overall seed in the playoff bracket if the playoffs were to start today. The Cubs are hold the number one wild card position with a record of 68 and 49, with the Diamondbacks and the Phillies being the other two wild card teams. If the playoffs were to begin today, it would see the Cubs taking on the Arizona Diamondbacks in a potential playoff in a 3 game series in round one of the playoffs, as the Brewers would have the bye week. The Braves would get no, I'm sorry, there is no bye week anymore. As The Brewers would get the Phillies, the Diamondbacks would get the Braves, and I think we might even get the Dodgers. That would be a tough matchup. That would be a tough first round matchup, but we've matched up well with them so far. But I think the thing with the Dodgers to remember is they're a team built for October, and they have a lot of starting pitchers coming back from injury. So the Cubs' upcoming week, we'll see them finish off the weekend in Kansas City with 2 games, going out to Washington D.C. for 3 games with the last place Washington Nationals before coming home to face the St. Louis Cardinals. 6 games. Mike texted me his pick, and he went with 5 games. I'm going to go a little bit more conservative and go with 4. So, as you can tell by the show title, New Cubs in the Den, we're going to talk about. I'm going to give you my opinion on what the Cubs did at the trade deadline. So, the Cubs So coming into the den as new Cubs, we have starting pitcher Kevin Gaussman, who started last night's game in Kansas City. We got him from the Blue Jays for Brett Bateman and Ty Southseen, two prospects that I've never heard of. So thumbs up on that trade. Goffman is a veteran starting pitcher who had great postseason success last year. This year, kind of been getting roughed up just a little bit as he had an ERA over 6 in June and May, but he's an expiring contract. Great addition to the team. Love it. Clay Holmes and Tyron Taylor coming over from the New York Mets. Going out, leaving the Cubs is infield prospect Jefferson Rojas, who is the Cubs' number 2 overall prospect. Clay Holmes is a converted closer as he has relief appearances from his days in the Bronx with the New York Yankees. Taylor, a former Brewer, so he's got continuity and playing experience with Craig Counsell from their time together in Milwaukee, and he'll function as an extra outfielder for the team, and it's looking like maybe even a platoon partner for Ian Happ. So I like the addition of both Taylor and Holmes, as Holmes could be a number 2 starter in the postseason, 2 or 3 starter in the postseason, or with a crowded rotation with Edward Cabrera coming back and Javier Assad still putting up great starts for us. Maybe Clay Holmes gets shifted to the bullpen for the playoffs as well. So Clay Holmes like Kaufman is on an expiring contract. Jefferson Rojas on the other side could be a guy that comes back to bite us, as Rojas was the Cubs' number 2 overall prospect, but he plays the wrong position as an infielder. We've got our infield locked up for the next couple of years. So you got to give talent to get talent. And so I hope this guy doesn't come back to bite us. But if anything, maybe it's payback for how we stole Pete Crow Armstrong from them with the Javi Baez trade. Next up, the Cubs acquired Rob Zephyrjan from the Angels. Going outbound was Moises Ballesteros and Mason McGuire. Ballesteros is a guy I didn't really want to see traded, but he doesn't have a position with the Cubs, and he doesn't really play a position, as he's a catcher that is scores out really bad defensively, and so you're DHing the guy. So and Ballesteros had started the season pretty hot when he came up with the Cubs, putting in being a solid contributor to the lineup. Um, but pitchers figured him out, and he just wasn't able to keep it going, and was having trouble finding playing time in Chicago. So when he did get spot starts, he just wasn't delivering. And since going back to AAA Iowa, he hasn't figured out how to hit again. So I'm hoping that Moises Ballesteros getting time with going out to Anaheim and getting consistent playing time can figure it out and be a solid member of the Angels. We also acquired Braxton Garrett, a left-handed pitcher from the Marlins. He's a controllable guy. He's got a couple of years of contractual control, so he could be a part of the Cubs rotation next year. So this year he's still recovering from injuries, but he has been added to the big league club. So we'll have to wait and see how Craig Counsell decides to deploy him, either if he'll get starts, if he'll be in long relief, or if this is a move for next year. Going over to Miami is Jace Beck, a pitcher who I'd never heard of, and Jonathan Long. Jonathan Long is a first baseman and an outfielder who's put together some very solid seasons out in Des Moines with the Iowa Cubs, but hasn't gotten a chance to play. Hasn't gotten up to the big league club, and I think Jonathan Long right now in his career is like grading out to be a 4A player. Not good enough to be in the majors, but too good to be in the minors. So hopefully, with an opportunity to play more in Miami, things will go out, and he'll also be reunited with former Cub prospect Owen Casey out in Miami, the guy that we acquired in the Edward Cabrera trade in the off season. And the final trade that the Cubs made was with the Blue Jays, sending Cash and Jamison Tejon to Toronto for a player to be named later. So overall, I like what the Cubs got. They had a deadline mandate of wanting to improve the pitching staff, and they did that by acquiring Clay Holmes and Kevin Goffman. They get an upgrade for a fourth outfielder with Teron Trailer, replacing Justin Dean on the roster. Dean's still on the Cubs 40-man roster, but he's going to be probably playing in Iowa until more roster spots open up later on in the year, where we can afford to have a guy that's more known for his speed and defense. Where Taylor has the speed, defense, but can also hit. So looking forward to seeing that. Rob Zephyr John, fireballing right-hander, could be in the mix to be in the Cubs closer by committee. Yeah, could be in the mix to be in the Cubs closer by committee role. So I like it. Good additions. So the other thing I liked about the Cubs trade deadline is that we didn't lose some top prospects that we're obviously going to need later on in the year, later on next year, like Jackson Wiggins, Owen Akers, and Ethan Conrad, guys that I'm kind of surprised are still on the team with the trade deadline being passed, were Kevin Alcantara and Pedro Ramirez and James Torontos. Pedro Ramirez has been a nice addition to the team since being brought up from Iowa and can play all over the infield, but like trading Jefferson Rojas, you don't necessarily have a pathway to get him regular playing time. And the same thing with James Torontos. So hopefully they can get some outfield reps or rotate them through the DH role, um, to keep them fresh and be good bench pieces. And Kevin Alcantara is getting really close to being in that 4A type of player for the Cubs, as he's been going up and down. He's almost been on the shuttle between Chicago and Des Moines all year. But maybe they see something in Alcantara to where he could be a piece next year when you got Seiya Suzuki and Ian Happ hitting free agency. So maybe the book isn't closed on Kevin Alcantara just yet. As for a hole that I thought the Cubs should have fixed with the trade deadline was a closer going into the deadline, because we've had many times on this show, Mike and I talking, and we said we should have won that game. And also when you're going into the ninth inning, Pat's famous line, "Fasten those seatbelts." No truer. That has been so true this year without having a dominant closer, where with this guy coming into the game, you got a good chance of winning. This year, that closer rotation has filtered around Caleb Thielbar, Daniel Palencia, Jason Webb, now Rob Zephyr. Not a recipe that you want in the playoffs, mixing and matching your ninth inning guy. But probably the two biggest relievers that you had on the trade market are Roldis Chapman and Mason Miller. Well, the Padres and Red Sox played them into being buyers at the trade deadline. So those two guys off of the list, there just wasn't a good closer available to acquire. So I'll take Zephyr John. And like I pointed out, when you're making that postseason rotation, maybe one of Clay Holmes or Edward Cabrera get bumped to a bullpen role, and that's how you get your saves in the playoffs. But overall, the Cubs had a goal of improving their pitching staff. They did that. They needed a bullpen arm. They got it in Zephyr John. Could have been better. as other guys like Luke Weaver, who went over to Pittsburgh from New York, were available, and he has more closing. He has actual closing experience, but I'll take it. I thought the Cubs did a great job overall. Moving on to the other teams that I liked, I thought the team that did probably improved the most, the Dodgers. The Dodgers got Tarek Skubal for some prospects that were top 10, but were on the bottom end of their top 10 list. Skubal going over to LA not only improves the Dodgers rotation, being a back to back Cy Young Award winner in the American League, but it also keeps him off of teams like that who they would face in the playoffs, like Philadelphia, Milwaukee, and Chicago. So yes, the rich get richer, but it is a wise move for them, as if you can acquire the best pitcher in baseball that was available at the deadline and keep him off a potential playoff rivals team, it's a win-win. And you didn't have to give up your top prospects. So good for the Dodgers, bad for baseball, I guess. But we'll see. The Cubs beat him, so there's that. Um, and a team that I'd say kind of head scratching, maybe didn't do enough. The Milwaukee Brewers. I thought that they would have been a great fit for Tarek Skubal, as this could have been the year to push in your chips to the center, go all in to get over the hump and get into the World Series, which the Brewers haven't been in since the 80s. Um, Instead, they pivoted and got Dustin May from the St. Louis Cardinals, as well as a catcher in Bo Naylor. So we'll have to see whether those are enough moves to keep Milwaukee in the overall number one overall seed and maybe even World Series favorites as the season goes on, as they just keep on winning. A team that I thought could have done more at the trade deadline was those Detroit Tigers. I was kind of scratching my head on who they got in return in the Skubal trade. I thought they could have gotten more, but the guy is a Scott Boras client, so you know he's going to hit free agency. So getting something for him is better than nothing. But they also had, but a guy that I'm surprised they didn't trade away was Kenley Jansen. Kenley Jansen, who could have gone to a team in need of a reliever. The only thing that I can think of is why Detroit didn't trade off more is that they're only 2 games back in the wild card in the American League, as well as, well, only 3.5 back in their division. So maybe it was a subtraction, a trying to sell their best asset, but still remain competitive. Um, and then a team that I thought got an incomplete trade, as I thought they could have traded more. The LA Angels. I applaud them for finally doing a rebuild and trading away players instead of being stuck in purgatory and in the middle land of not being good enough to contend, but not being bad enough to benefit from having bad records and getting a high draft pick. They did trade away expiring contracts like Kirby Yates, Joe Adell, and Logan O'Hop, as well as trading away a guy that came out of nowhere this year to deliver great results for him early in the year and then has cooled off in Jose Sariano. However, you didn't strike while the iron was hot on a guy like Reed Detmers, who has club control but really has no history as having a career year. And I think they could have gotten even more prospects if they would have traded Reed Detmers, as well as shortstop Zach Neto, and as well as Mike Trout. I know Mike Trout's a career angel, and it would have been hard to trade away a franchise star, an icon. Um, but maybe Mike Trout had something to do with that, saying that I don't want to be traded. So I can respect that if that was the case. But if that wasn't, trade Mike Trout, who's having a resurgent injury free year and could have helped the team like the Philadelphia Phillies. And you would have sent him home to Philly if you would have pulled the trigger and traded Mike Trout. So that's my opinions on the trade deadline. We'll keep this on the outline for next week when Mike is back on the air with me. All right. So next week, Mike and I will be taking a look. We'll be starting our NFL preview schedule as we will be going. We'll be looking at the Bears season as a whole and giving our way too early wins and loss predictions. August 20th, the show that we'll record on the 21st and the 22nd, we'll be looking at division and wild cards. The weekend of the 28th to the 29th, we'll be looking at fantasy football, top six at each position in our opinions. Um, and then the 4th and the 5th, Labor Day weekend, we'll obviously be looking at, we'll be starting our regular season coverage as we got Thursday night football and the Wednesday kickoff game that week. So that is all the show that I have for you today. Shout outs this week again go out to Danielle Hart, whose birthday was this weekend. Happy birthday. Um, yeah, happy birthday, Danielle. And congratulations to Solomon Stroop, who got married this weekend. So I'm sure Mike is down there celebrating with them, with the family. So that is all the show that I have for you today. As always, you can catch our show out in podcast land. Look up Balls and Sticks, the podcast, wherever you download and listen to all of your other on your preferred podcast platform. If you're listening to us in podcast land, make sure to um, like, comment, and subscribe so you can be notified when Mike posts updated episodes to the podcast platform. And if you're listening to us in podcast land and want to see the live recordings of the show, look us up on YouTube. Look us up on YouTube so you can interact with the show. This week, we do not have any comments on the YouTube comment line. And finally, our poll questions are always posted on Facebook at Fans of Balls and Sticks, the podcast. This week's poll, which will be going live here in a couple minutes, will be Foursquare versus Dodgeball as we continue our poll series questions related to grade school PE activities. So I thank you all for watching the video, and Mike and I will be back next week, more than likely on a Saturday morning. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your week. And we'll talk with you next week.